Welcome, everybody, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined this week by two very special return guests. I don't even know if they're guests because they're technically hosts of this as well. Derek Preece, Katie Harris, managing partners, Spot On Solutions. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Hayden.
It's always great to be here. I look forward to these.
We need a total of how many episodes have we done together? 4, 5? Katie, we've done more.
Yeah,
Derek,
because she always has more to say. But 4 or 5 or 6. Yeah.
Hey, but congratulations on one year podcast.
100.
It's been a lot of fun. This has been really cool for me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
A whole year.
Yeah, the fact that we've somehow done a podcast a week has been crazy.
It's hilarious because we never thought would ever get kicked off the ground, and now it's
here.
I thought it would get kicked off the ground, Hayden. I knew. I had faith from the very beginning.
Well, at one point, Katie was like, Hayden, just post the episode. But that's a story for another podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we wanted to talk a little bit. We're still technically in Q1 2023.
Yes.
We wanted to talk a little bit about planning. And I wanted to intro this podcast by just kind of talking a little bit. We had Eric Sprague came on to the show, say, second or third week of January. We talked a little bit about goal setting with him, as well as initiating a plan and plans for goal setting. A lot of that conversation was around personal and your personal goals, right? And so I think what I wanted to talk about today was taking some of those planning pieces from Eric and from you guys and developing that into your business and how you guys have used planning both yearly and quarterly to help grow Spot On Solutions. And I think any kind of tips or info that we can provide to clients and our listeners, I think would be super, super helpful. So we just got finished the last 2 days. We spend usually a couple days every quarter doing our quarterly planning.
Yep.
This is something you guys have done for several years now.
Hey, we haven't done it since the beginning, though. We went
a long time without a plan.
First 4 years of our business, there was no plan.
We went a long time without a plan.
Well, and I don't think you're alone there. I think a lot of business owners don't necessarily sit down with their team or their management team and, okay, what are our goals? What are we going to do to accomplish them? This is what we're going to do all these things. So I don't think you were alone those first 4 years.
Oh, no.
And so I would love to just hear, you went from not planning. What was was there an event or something that you were like, we need to sit down every so often and plan this stuff out?
Well, we went to an event, a number of years ago. It was an Icon event. Put on by
It's
at
like
the time
Infusionsoft user.
Infusionsoft.
Right.
Yeah, now it's they've changed their name. It's Keep now, but we went to that event, and as we were going to the different breakouts, the different sessions, their founder Clayton Mask said something in that meeting
That changed
that
us.
literally changed how we think. And he said at that point, and they were on what he was calling their Everest mission at that time. And they had just like strategic plans to get there. But he said, what got us here is not going to get us there. He's like, at the time, it was like that what got him to 30 million was not going to get him to 300 million. Right. And the same plans and the same people, the same team, everything they had to get there was not going to get them to where they wanted to be. And so they had to make sure they were always strategically planning for the next steps and beyond. So we took that, granted, we weren't a $30 million company. We just barely in the shadows of what Infusionsoft was at the time. But
we had all kinds of growing pains going on right then. We were like, we don't know.
Right.
First of all, we didn't know what we didn't know, which was a lot.
Right. And so, but we knew that if we wanted, number one, to get clarity on what we wanted, and then if we wanted to start achieving the major objectives that we both wanted to achieve, that we had to implement, we had to start planning. And so we literally started looking for
A coach
that could help us help us lay out what a strategic plan would look like. And, granted, that doesn't mean that we didn't have some kind of a little bit of a background on coaching or planning, but we had just never implemented a plan specifically for our business
Right.
and the growth that and not just you, calculate growth usually by dollars and cents, right? But it's not just the dollars that we were trying to grow to.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, like it was at that point that we started really strategically thinking about what are we trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
That's where the, elevating business people and businesses started to
What's our vision? What's our mission? What are all those
started
pieces?
to materialize. And it was amazing when we started doing that.
I think with everything, until it gets painful enough,
Right.
you don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I look at some really pivotal moments in our business over the last decade, and a lot of them were like, it's just painful. This just hurts too much. This is just too hard. And so when you get to those points, it's like, we got to do something different. It's like when you go to the dentist and, if he sits there and pokes at your tooth and it hurts, you're like, yeah, fix my tooth. And that's how we were feeling. Like, this hurts. Like, let's fix it. And so we got into some training and we started learning what we didn't know. And we had to really elevate our own leadership skills. And we had to start doing things we hadn't done before, because we knew what got us here isn't going to get us where we need to be. And that was our first stab, really, at what it looks like to sit down and say, what are our goals for this year? And so I think that time when we started making annual goals and then that turned into quarterly priorities, that's when I started to see just this massive escalation in how fast we were growing and how fast we were accomplishing things. Because when you look at things as the whole, it's so big and you're trying to do so much that you don't make very much progress. But we had some really great mentors. Dan was a really great mentor for us. We met him at Elite Entrepreneurs.
Yep. Tyler was great.
Tyler Garnes, we met at Icon and with Infusionsoft. And those were really like the first two people that jumped in and taught us how to make those plans. And I remember the one time Dan telling us, maybe we can share his information in the show notes because he's awesome. Cool. But I remember one time we were telling him all of our priorities and he's like, no way. And we're like, but we got to get all these things done. He's like, you're never going to get all that stuff done. He's like, you got to pick 3. And I remember sitting in the room fighting with him a little bit. And I'm like, we can't pick 3.
We can't do it.
And I think we eventually persuaded him to let us pick 4 that first year.
Yeah. But then what's funny is, as we've, that was the first year, and then we have done it not just yearly every year since then, but quarterly. Like you said, quarterly. Like, we map out our direction for the next quarter every quarter. So, but what has happened is we literally have taken it from 4 down to 3. Like, we finally figured out that what Dan was telling us was right.
Well, and funny enough,
we go for 3. It's all we can focus on.
Funny enough, this quarter, if we want to kind of get into that, we took it to 2, right?
Hey, we have 2 massive
they're
priorities.
Big priorities.
This
they're big priorities, but we found that, hey, a lot of these things that we're like, we got to get these things done can kind of fall under 2 big priorities, objectives, whatever you want to phrase it. And I think that's one thing I want to hit at. The phrase that you both mentioned was like, what got us here is not going to get us where we want to go. That's a key piece to this that I think I want a lot of people to remember. But the other thing I want to say is how we plan for Spot On Solutions doesn't necessarily mean that's how other people have to plan. Like, whatever works for you and your organization, that's fine, but just have a plan.
It's true, but can I play
devil's
devil's advocate for you for just
a
minute? Because that's something I used to say all the time, right? Okay. Is just plan, and I 100% agree with that. That is true. However, there are some proven systems that
without question.
If you follow, you will succeed. And so I'm a really big fan of the book Traction. If you haven't read Traction and you're trying to build your team and grow your company, go read Traction. Teaches you how to do these. And we don't follow that system exactly, but we're pretty darn close to it, right?
Yeah.
Because there are definitely some things that you can't do without. Another thing that I remember one of our coaches teaching us is you're going to be really tempted as you get better at this and you get more comfortable doing these quarterly planning. You're going to get really tempted to skip parts of it, right?
Right.
They're saying you're going to get really tempted to skip your SWOT, where you sit down and talk about your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And he's like, I will warn you right now, if you do that, you will fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you think in the world of digital age where everything is electronic, everything is on a device. I mean, we have technology all around us,
Right.
that, you know, and we have a lot of remote people that work with us, right? That we bring into these that we value as very critical team members, right? But when we plan, it is awesome, because literally, other than we have Jessica who's typing so that the people online can see it, this entire room
We should have left
is
it filled.
covered
actually.
Oh, yeah.
with those great big Post-it,
Yeah.
notebook charts.
I didn't
right?
know until quarterly planning with you guys, they made Post-it notes that big.
Oh, and you have, okay, tip. If you're going to do this, make sure that you use the Post-it brand.
Yeah, don't
notes.
go off brand.
And if Angie was here, she would
We're gonna get Posted to be a sponsor
die
of the
laughing
podcast.
with us. But one day she decided to go cheap on the post.
In all fairness, I told her to.
In all fairness,
I was like,
Katie
don't
told
pay that much
don't
on
get
Post-it
those.
notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the whole 2 days, we were dealing with papers falling off of the wall. It was hilarious. So yeah, we did, but get the Post-it brand. But we do.
Yeah.
And
we go
just
old
like
school.
Katie
It's
said,
pen and paper. Like that's what we're doing.
we start every single session with a wins and lessons learned.
And we bring our
segment.
whole team into that.
The whole team
The whole
comes.
team comes into that.
Yep.
And we don't call it wins and losses, because they're not losses. Every time,
it's a lesson
everything we
learned.
learn is something that helps us to elevate, right?
Yep.
And to pivot and to change. But so we have a great session on what did we win over the last quarter?
Yeah.
What did we learn? And that leads us into that whole SWOT analysis. And if you're not familiar with what SWOT is, it's actually SWOT plus, right?
Yeah.
Strengths. What are your strengths? What weaknesses are you having that are happening right now? What opportunities do you see for your team, for growth, to implement? What are the opportunities that lie before us right now and potentially into the future? And then what threats do you see, right? What threats are on the horizon? And usually, and I'll let Katie, she describes this really well, the kind of the difference between the internal and the external part. But after we SWOT all the different areas of our business, right? Because we have different platforms we're working on, but we spend a great amount of time running those SWOT analysis, and then working on this. The plus part is the strategic planning for the next, for that quarter. So
Yeah.
You know what's crazy to me is, so if you break things down to those 90-day increments, right? A quarter, just what are we going to do in the next 90 days? I really thought, how much of a difference can that make, right? I didn't get it until we started doing it. Such massive momentum happens when you have a laser focus on top priorities for 90 days and everybody's rowing the same direction.
Yep.
I was shocked at how we were taking things that had been initiatives for years that we've been talking about, and we were kicking them out in a quarter because everybody was focused on that. And I also really love when we sit down with the whole team and we're just talking in the last 90 days, what are the wins and the lessons learned? How many things come up on that board that we forgot about?
Yeah.
We just get busy, right? We get into the grind. We get going on whatever the day looks like. And very rarely do we take enough time to sit down with our team as everyone together and celebrate what those wins look like. And it's really cool when somebody brings something up and we're like, oh yeah, that was awesome. And you just take a minute and you celebrate something that's making your company and your team awesome.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And I think, my first quarterly planning was, over a year ago, but it's been fun to see us kind of achieve some of those goals as we've built over the last, year and a half. And, again, going back to both of your first initial points was like, where we are getting where we want to go. We can't be doing the same thing we're doing now. Right. Like we can't. And I think I sometimes get caught up in that because I'm like, gosh, we've done some really awesome things in the last 6 months. But if we want to reach where we're going in the next 6 months, we've got to change some things up. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, think about that too. Like you said, you just joined us for your first strategic plan about a year and a half ago.
You've been in about 5 or 6
so
of them.
that was December, and then I did 4 last year.
Yeah.
So 5. So this is my 6th one I've done. Yeah.
And you think about that, like, all right, we brought you in to that first strategic planning that you did. I mean, we'd had others, and again, we focus on that. What got us here is not going to get us where we want to go.
Yep.
And think about now, you've been through now half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
And what does our team look like?
Oh, it's completely different.
It's not
completely different. Doesn't sound. It sounds. Like
it's not
drastic.
Doesn't sound, don't make it sound like we've eliminated everybody on the team and we start over. That's not what's happening.
No.
Our players are still in place, but we have added some
game.
really awesome strategic players as well too.
We've added people, but we've also just changed the structure of everything, right?
Yeah, and so we learned to pivot and to expand. So
talk to me about this. This is kind of fun for me.
Okay.
But coming in, you'd never sat in something like this before, right? It was your first kind of experience coming into it. So, if you're watching this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast and you've got a whole team and you're thinking, okay, I gotta go build a team. I'm gonna start doing some strategic planning with my whole team.
Yep.
What's it like coming into that for the first time?
For the first time, yeah, it was interesting because I think every company, every business that I've been a part of or organization, whatever, I've, small jobs from moving irrigation pipe up to working for, really large companies. Everybody's got goals, I think. So like coming in when we first were talking, our annual priorities, those are synonymous for me with like, what are our goals for the year, right?
Yep.
Or for the next 2 years or whatever it might be. So that was like, oh yeah, okay, those are our goals. Sweet. It's nice to see those out. But very rarely do you get an insider's look of like, how are we going to accomplish the goals? So that was really cool for me to see like, okay, how are we going to accomplish, X amount of dollars in revenue, or how are we going to accomplish building a sales team, or how are, and I think using tools like SWOT, I think SWOT is a great tool to kind of identify, okay, what are the pieces to this? And for me, yeah, it was exhausting. I think the first quarterly planning. Oh yeah. I remember the first, I was like, we're going to spend 2 days locked in a room basically with each other for 9 hours, both of these days, and just talk about like planning. Like I was like, are you sure we can't do this in just like 30 minutes or something? Like it was tiring, but like I came out of it like, oh, like now I know how we're going to do this amount of revenue, or now I know how we're going to, we're going to restructure our team or build a sales team. Like now I have a clear picture in my mind of, okay, this is how we're going to accomplish those things. So it was cool for me who, my personality is big picture. That's always been who I like. I love looking at what is the why. Like, okay, our revenue goal is this. How are we going to get there? Why is that our revenue goal? I love looking at the big picture stuff. And for me, it was like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. It was really cool.
Well, a major part of that is that when we get to the point where we have, obviously in Q4 we are setting our priorities for the new quarter coming up, right?
Right. So my first one was like, it was a quarterly planning, but it was also like kind of like a yearly.
But it's the annual plan, right?
Yeah.
So we're setting our priorities for the annual, for the next year, setting our goals, and then we break that down into quarterly priorities, right? And those quarterly priorities then we get strategic tactics, right?
Yep.
And the key to these is the ownership factor, right?
Yeah.
And everything gets every priority receives an owner, right? And we put ownership on that, and then we map out the steps.
And we call it tops and smarts.
Tops and smarts. Yep.
What's the tactical operating procedure for this thing? And then what are all the things that need to happen?
What are our SMART goals?
And so then the owner of that priority goes and starts delegating. Here's the plan. Here's what we want to accomplish, and I need you to do this, and you to do this, and you to do this by these dates. And it's like the magic sauce. It really is.
Well, similar to having a vision, and our mission has some of those kind of, maybe not annual priorities, but has some of those kind of goals mixed in there. Our mission has, we're going to win the cleaning and restoration industry by 2023, as well as expand into other industries, right? So like our annual priorities kind of feed those things, our vision and our mission. But it's fun because you can always reference back to those. So at any point in the year, I look back to 2022 and be like, okay, when we did this, I can in my mind be like, oh, and it was to accomplish this priority.
Connected.
It was to accomplish this priority or to accomplish this piece of our mission.
And that's
or whatever,
the checkpoint. Right? If you've got a priority focus on something that does not get you closer to your annual goal,
It's like, why are we doing it?
You're not doing it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
scratched.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it.
Exactly.
So.
Like, I think, this is to kind of get behind the curtain a little bit for Spot On Solutions, but we made a pretty big shift last summer to kind of shift how our teams are organized. And I think that's been a huge piece of to our success the latter half of 2022. And I think, again, like, I have a horrible memory, but I look back, I'm like, gosh, why did we shift focus to teams and we changed how our structure? And I was like, oh yeah, it was because we had some big goals for 2022. We weren't knocking it out of the park the first 2 quarters, so we needed to figure out how we were going to do it, and we had to adjust our focus. And
and it was awesome, huh?
And it was awesome. Yeah.
And I love for anybody listening that's maybe new to strategic planning, it gets really exciting when your team starts to be a part of it, right? Yeah. That was really okay. So we were kind of scared the first time we started doing strategic planning. Like, we're walking into this, and
right.
And he's like, you got to invite your whole team. So the first times we did this, we didn't know how to do it, which meant we had a coach in the room, right?
Right.
We have somebody else running the show that's teaching us how to do it as we're going. And it's like, bring your whole team. You got to have buy-in, and you want them to be a part of it. And we're like, do we?
Do we really want our whole team
Do we
there?
really want to go have all these conversations with it? Can you have these type of conversations? And, man, you really can. Yeah. And so we know one of the rules when you walk in the room, we always say it at the start of the meeting, right, is this is a safe place, and we're going to have some hard conversations, and we're going to have them with respect, and we are going to have them with the goal of getting where we need to be, right? Yeah. And it amazes me. It always amazes me. Matter of fact, the other day I had a real aha moment when we were sitting there in the middle of the planning. It always amazes me at how smart the insights are that come from our team members, right? How honest, how vulnerable everybody gets in that room, because it's like sometimes you're saying things and it hits close to home. I'll tell you, there's sometimes I go home after some of these plannings and I feel like I just got the crap beat out of me.
Yeah.
And I think as an owner, right? As an owner, you'll feel like that sometimes. Yep. You just got it handed to you. And you have a choice to make.
But it's done in a nice way.
It is, but it's hard. I mean, who likes to sit in a room for 2 days and hear hard things and hear problems? And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And, but man, if you want to get your company to the place where you have the type of freedom you've been dreaming of, you're reaching the goals that you have, if you want to do that, as a leader, you have to learn how to sit in that space and not just take it, but appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, and be willing to, as a leader, make adjustments, right? Because at the end of the day, you have all the planning, right? But they still look to you as the leader, and so you've got to, at the end of the day, they're looking for the stamp of approval, right? Yeah. So you have to be humble enough to say, yeah, this is right. We're going to do this, right? And I'm 100% honest. I'm a very high I personality. I'm very distractible. And I sit around the room and I'm like, everybody's pointing fingers at me because I'm the missing link here that is causing potentially some of the challenges, right? And I have to say, it is my fault that we have not got to this point. And so this is what I'm willing to, what we're willing to do, what I can change to make things better. So but it's awesome when you have a great team too, and a team that you trust. And they, like Katie said, they bring
so much value.
I mean, Katie and I, we're dreamers, right? Yeah. We look at things and we're like, yes. Mm-hmm. We look at the Mount Everest and we're like, let's go to the top of that. We have no freaking idea that we got to have, the right equipment, and we got to, and we got to stop.
Got to wear a coat.
We got to stop partway to take a break, and sleep at night. We don't think about that.
We don't recognize
right?
that. Yeah.
But we have members of our team that say, great, this is an awesome goal. We want to reach it, but these are the things we have to consider.
We have to do,
right?
to get there.
In order to get there, and to get there safely, and to bring everybody home.
Yes.
But it's awesome. So we have, I think, there's, it's tip of my tongue, but he talks about getting the right people on the bus.
Oh yeah,
and
the
then
right
putting
seats on the
in
bus.
right
I know
seats
the analogy.
on the
Yeah,
bus,
yeah.
right. Oh,
I know what you mean.
I can't remember who said that, what book it's in, but I mean that's the thing. Like we work really hard of getting the right people on the bus and then putting them in the right seat.
Yeah.
And I remember when we were really when we started to get into it, because at first we got into it, like I said, out of pain. It's like, I'll try anything, right? Like just help me fix all this stuff. Yeah. And then I got in, then we were excited. Like, hey, this is working. I kind of get this, right? And all along the way, like we got coaches, we got mentors, we got people that are helping us learn how to do this. And now it's just like, it's so part of our system. It's just like we would not do a quarterly plan. We would not do these things, right? Because it's just so mission critical to who we are that we're super passionate about it. Matter of fact, like our clients, we're doing digital marketing for them, but you get talking about quarterly planning and we're like, let's go. You want to talk about mission, vision, values? Let's go.
Yeah.
Because it changes the game for us all the time.
We won't miss a quarter.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
It has become part of our culture, has become part of like you said, we've just finished, and we'll take
take our priorities,
all of the
get
papers,
our owners,
right?
And
Then we'll digitize them. We'll make sure that we have all the check boxes, and
Yep.
it'll all be all set up. It'll be awesome. But then next week, we will plan for the next quarter, or we'll have our next quarterly meeting planned, and we're working towards.
Yeah,
that
we'll
goal,
know
right? We'll have it on the date.
when will the next one be? June.
June.
Yeah, like we'll have that on the date on the calendar, and
Derek will have his airplane tickets.
I love
purchased
the
to
June.
come to
I love the June and I love the October ones. Because those are the ones when I get to come to Idaho
and it's
the
not
weather
freezing.
is decent.
Yeah, the
It's got
weather's
a little
somewhat
bit
good.
of snow. You're okay.
You're becoming soft, Derek. You're spending too much time in Texas.
My blood is extremely thin.
So Hayden, I loved as we really, implemented this in our business, and I started looking around at businesses that I really respected, right? Business owners that I really respected, businesses that I was like, man, they've got it figured out. I like their growth. I like what they're doing. And every single one of them that I've ever talked to, that's something that they have in common. They don't miss annual planning and they don't miss quarterly planning.
Don't miss a quarterly plan.
And I think that it is one of the keys as you grow a business is you've got to learn as a leader how to hold those meetings. And I love, like, now we don't have somebody that's in the room that's kind of, mediating or guiding us through it, because we've done it a lot. And we know that is, and our team's done it a lot, and they'll hold us accountable to it as well. But if it's new, I mean, if you're listening to this, you're like, I don't even know where to get started, man, get a coach. There's some great ones out there. We love stepping into this process with people because it changes the trajectory of your business. And honestly, it makes your business a lot more fun.
Well, and again, we've said it multiple times, but what got you where you are today is not going to get you where you want to go. So,
getting where you want to go is fun.
It's the fun part.
It's
fun.
And
I talk to business owners every day that are like, well, this is how we've always done it. And that phrase it will kill your business. Frankly.
Well, it will definitely stop your growth.
Yeah.
Like
at some point
you're going to just run into a dam.
Yep.
Right.
And so having a quarterly having annual priorities and having a quarterly priorities and a quarterly planning meeting, annual planning meeting, it can just take you to the next level. And ultimately, like I think every business owner wants to grow their business. They just don't know how. And I think something as simple as just sitting down and doing this,
listen, if you're new to it, like, it's not comfortable.
No, it's intimidating for sure.
And it's not really that much fun. The first couple of times you do it, it's hard.
Well,
it's hard and it's humbling.
Well, I have mixed emotions every time we do it. Like, I'm so excited to do it, and then afterwards I'm like, it's like daunting almost, right? But I think it should feel that way. I think if you come out of quarterly planning and are like, well, that was the easiest 2 days of my life, and
you wasted your time.
You didn't accomplish anything.
People come out of it with there's two really common things that happen. And sometimes it's both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
One of them is like, man, I am tired. That was hard.
I'm exhausted.
I'm spent. I'm done. And the other one is, I'm so excited.
Yeah. And
it's like this combo.
And I think you should feel both. You don't necessarily need to film at the same time, but I think if you're not feeling both, you didn't do a good job.
You remember the very first one we had, and I mean, we've known and been friends with Chuck Biolan and their team for a long, long time, and they do, they put on annual business planning retreats for their clients every year.
Where people
we go
literally
to them.
like leave their office, right? Go sit down in a room without distractions to do their annual business.
Go do
plan.
that.
And they talk about, you got to have a mission, you got to have a vision, you got to have values. Well, and we've known that, but remember the very first time that we sat down with our team, like it was painful to come up with our mission, our vision, the value, usually values. I mean, they kind of flow with the ownership of the company.
But no one
right?
person could just rattle off what that was. It's like,
it actually took us a couple of years to perfect what we have today as our driving, our vision, our mission, and our
well, and the cool thing is
values.
Every single person that works here, they know it.
Yeah.
Like every single one, can rattle that off in a second. The first 2 days of your training with us, when you start working here, that's what we're talking about.
Yep, totally.
Right? And so we elevate people and businesses. And
you walk in the front door, and that's the first thing you see. Yeah. Like on that big mural. It's like, so
we can have a whole other podcast on setting your purpose and your mission and your values. So,
but it did take us some time. I mean, we thought we had it worked out the first time. It's this is great. This is going to work great. And then
you grow into it.
We kind of tweaked it, and then we tweaked it, and then now we have that part. So obviously we review it, but now our strategic planning sessions are like, okay, we know everything's got to point towards the mission, vision, and values. We just don't have to spend all our time developing them. Now we can literally like laser focus on getting there.
Yep.
Right?
All right, do your speed round. Come on, I'm ready for it.
Speed round. All right, are you sure you're ready?
Unless you change the questions.
Throw you a giant curveball. Well, some of them will probably be the same answers. But first question for both of you, favorite book or podcast that you're reading or listening to right now?
I have a very, very, very favorite author right now, and that is Ryan Holiday.
Oh, yeah.
So Ryan Holiday, I think before I said The Daily Stoic, which is a great book, but man, he's got a whole series. Matter of fact, I was at a business planning retreat when Scott Severe walks in from CoreLogic, and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, Scott, I read the best book on the airplane. I loved it so much. He's like, no, I read the best book on the airplane. And I was like, what'd you read? And I said, Courage is Calling by Ryan Holiday. And he's like, Discipline is Destiny. Destiny is Discipline. One of those by Ryan Holiday. And I was like, I didn't know that book. And those two books, my two very favorite books right now.
Love it.
Love them.
Derek, what do you got?
Well, I like those as well too, and I'm reading Traction, but my most current and favorite book is one probably, I don't know how many people know about it, but it's written by Dr. Nathaniel Hearn, and it's the story behind Friday Night Lights.
That's I think next up on my list. You were showing it to me yesterday.
Like
so
just
good.
An amazing man, and his story and how he affected people's lives through, if you've seen the movie Friday Night Lights, he tells him he was one of the assistant coaches through that whole period of time.
Yeah.
And
his whole life is just an inspiration.
And his life is,
so we're going to get him on the podcast.
And we are going to have him on the podcast, but I'm just totally inspired by that guy. So that's my favorite book that I've been reading I shouldn't say I've been reading. I finished it because it was like one of those like, oh my gosh, this is a great book.
At the end of a long day, like a long day of quarterly planning, how do you relax and recharge?
That's not a great question.
Okay,
it's not a great question for you because you're not in home. You're not at home.
Because I'm exhausted after these things.
Okay, but how do you relax? Derek, what do you think? Long day of anything, long day of work. What do you do?
I learned the other day that what I had thought I might want to start doing, I realized I thought I might want to start fishing. It's all right, but I think I'm going to stick with golf. I love to just
golf's great.
End up on a golf course somewhere.
Love it. Katie, what about you?
I spent so many years chasing my kids around like to games after school and stuff, which I always loved. It was my favorite thing to do is go cheer for my kids. And then things grew up and moved away and turned into adults. And so I don't get to do that as much, but it's still family. Last week I got to spend the whole week with with my parents and my oldest son at a tennis tournament at Indian Wells. And I just realized, like, man, if I need a recharge, I just got to, like, just spend some time with my family.
I've heard her recharge when she talks to her grandchildren.
Derek makes fun of my grandma voice, okay?
Oh my
like, I have a
gosh.
grandma voice that is so fun.
We
She
all
has-
do. We all have one when you're talking to young kids. Come on, Derek.
We
Yeah.
talked about this earlier. She doesn't have a church voice, but she has her sales voice. She has her boss voice.
And I'm most proud of my grandma.
And she
Oh,
has
grandma
a
voice.
grandma
Yes.
voice, and it is
Fun.
hilariously amazing.
Okay,
It's
that's a
just-
good call.
that's-
Yeah, you the way you phrased that, I was a little nervous how you were
No,
doing that.
it is awesome. I've witnessed it a number of times, and I've been driving. We've been in the conference room at hotels, and I just quietly sit there and giggle because it's
That's so great.
fun
Hey,
to
listen,
listen
if you
to.
haven't played hide and go seek with your grandkid
Over
over
Face-
FaceTime,
yeah.
you just haven't lived.
There you
Because it's so fun.
Okay, last thing. If you could rewind to the beginning of the planning journey. Let's say, I won't make you rewind to the beginning because we've asked those questions to
Yeah.
you before, but rewind to the beginning of starting to do quarterly and annual planning, which sounded like 5-6 years ago. What would be one thing you would tell younger Katie, younger Derek? What would you say?
Ooh, you put a twist in there for us.
Yeah. What would you say? Derek, what do you got?
I would say, I wish we would have done it earlier.
It's like, start doing this earlier.
No, seriously. I
Okay.
wish we would have done
All
it.
right.
I wish we would have done it from the beginning. And then because we didn't do it at the beginning, I wish we would have done it after the first year.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish we would have done it. That would have told myself if I was a business owner and if I'm starting today or if I've been in business for 10 years and you're not taking time,
Even if you fumble through it.
fumble through it, find a coach.
Yeah.
If and then if you don't have one in mind, contact us and we'll point you in the right direction.
right.
But
Love it.
like, get a coach and start planning and do it, because like I've learned to don't beat myself up, but if we would have strategically planned those first few years, we would have been
Further along.
a lot further along. But they say, the best time to plant a tree is
10 years ago.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
The second best time is today. Right? So
Love it. Katie, what about you?
I think that if I'm trying to like put myself in that place.
Yeah.
All that time ago, and for some reason I felt like I had to like be like the boss woman in the room, right, and know all the answers, and that's just wrong. I think if I could go back in time, I'd say, like, let yourself be a little bit more vulnerable.
Yeah.
When you're sitting in that group,
Yeah.
because honestly, like, to sit in a room and just be like, I didn't know that. Or,
Yeah.
hey, this scares me, or this
Yeah.
is really hard for me. Maybe not like my most natural tendency to let that guard down and sit in a room and do that. I think I'm better at it now than I used to be, but I would have done that sooner so that, it was just a little bit maybe more real for everybody.
Love it. Well, thank you both for coming on the podcast. This was fun for me to almost kind of do a recap or a debrief of our quarterly planning. And I know that, listeners that are still, listening to the podcast, if you would like to learn more about quarterly planning, you can reach out to us and we can get you connected with a coach. We know a lot of great people in the industry, and regardless of what industry you're in, this is a huge piece to owning and operating a business. And we've found great success with it. And I know, anybody that's listening that owns a business will find the same. So
Yep.
got
Now
it.
we got to get off this podcast. We got to go get to work and getting those quarterly plans done.
amen. Thanks, guys.
Just
Thanks,
kidding.
Hayden.
See you, Hayden. Thanks.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.